That countdown was pretty awesome, I must say. But hello and welcome everybody to a super special Let's Learn stream where we're going to be talking all about the Model Context Protocol. I'm here with James. James, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. It's good to be here with you, Katie. I'm James Montemagno. I'm our lead for our developer community here at Microsoft and our developer division. And I do love MCP stuff. And Katie and I, with Den, had an awesome MCP talk at Build. So off of that, people were so interested in MCP, the Model Context Protocol, building out servers to interact with LLMs. We decided to do a Let's Learn MCP. And Katie, there's a bunch of these, right?
There's a whole bunch of them. So we have a couple of different English ones. Of course, as you probably already know, this is our C#/.NET stream, but we also have them running for Java, for Python, for TypeScript, and we have them in a bunch of different natural languages as well. So Spanish, Portuguese. If you're interested, we do have a blog with all those links or the registration link that you probably used to find this video. And I'll be sure to send that in the chat as well.
Yeah, and the Microsoft Reactor is hosting a bunch of the streams as well. And we have lots more information on other exciting MCP events coming up, Katie, as well. But you want to just get into it?
I think we should get into it first. Then we'll give them the lowdown on every other way that they can learn about MCP. But we really set up this event to give you a super fundamental, beginner-friendly introduction to what MCP even is and how you can use it and even how you can build your own servers.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff today, right?
Yeah, we're talking about a ton of stuff. So we're going to start with just going through what is MCP, how does it work, how can you use it, and kind of like a little bit of the why of it all. So why did this technology even come about? What problem is it solving? Then we're going to jump into an in-depth overview of MCP features. And if you're like, what are MCP features? I don't even know. Don't worry, we're going to break it down super in-depth for you. And then finally, we're going to be doing some building. So we're going to build an MCP server in C#. And actually along the way, we have other mini demos that we're going to be jumping into as well, just to really like give you a holistic view of this standard protocol.
Yeah, and we have a aka.ms set up. So those are like our Microsoft links. You probably sign up at Let's Learn MCP. If you do -C#, that's going to take you to a GitHub repo, which is a 3-part for today, basically, these different parts. We have a little bit of demos along the way, as Katie said. But additionally, you can follow along at home. So if you want to, you can code along with us. You can just watch, no big deal. You can do this later at your leisure. We wanted to make sure that you had a tutorial that you could go off and just take by yourself for this day. Now we have larger full beginner series and really in-depth guides and really like complex, awesome real things to build crazy, awesome MCP servers. But we wanted to start with some of the fundamentals. So it's a 3-part series that we developed. So I'm going to bring up my screen, Katie, really quick. Is that okay?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. All right. Boop. There it is. Okay. So this is the repo here by this gentleman, James Montemagno. And this is the guide. That's me. Well, I'm not gonna lie. So while I was doing this, I was like, I'm going to remember everything that we need to talk about. And that's not true. So I put this together. So today we're going to do a few things. We're going to build a full app just using MCP servers. And then we're also going to build our own custom MCP server. So we'll talk about that later on. But if you do want to follow along at home, you may already have some of these things installed. But the first step, part 1, is really this prerequisites of what you'll need in general. So this will walk you through making sure we're going to use VS Code today. You can obviously use Visual Studio as well. You'll need .NET 9 SDK, and you can verify the install. C# dev kit for VS Code. We will need Node.js installed. The LTS version is just fine. Docker desktop. So we're going to be running some MCP servers remotely and also inside of Docker as well, using some images pulled down there too. So, and we'll walk through why you need these different things as we kind of go through it. But those are the prerequisites. There's even a nice little checklist. This checklist was created by Copilot. Look at it. It even has, look at this, has little like TLDR if you're just like doing this like async, right? And
you're a visual learner.
Visual learner. It did some ASCII art. I didn't ask it to, but
you didn't ask it to? Katie gets kicked off the stream.
There you go. All right, I'll drop a link here into the show notes as well. But let's get into the meat of this, Katie.
Yeah, let's do it. So I think before we talk about that, what is MCP thing, I wanted to set a little bit of context to kind of talk about how did we even get here. So as you've probably felt and heard and seen, there's been a massive shift in the AI assisted coding space over the past couple of months. So previously you could interact with a client like GitHub Copilot by asking it questions like in the chat, or you could have it complete your code and you get that gray text, and it was kind of this cool magical experience. You could even have it help you edit a file. But then in VS Code and Visual Studio, there was this big change, which was agent mode. And this really turned GitHub Copilot into an autonomous AI programmer. What does that mean? That means that it could help really plan, execute, and iterate on these multi-step tasks. So now when you ask GitHub Copilot for help with something, it can really go and attack that issue and kind of figure out what's going on. But, you know, that is pretty powerful, totally supercharged tool, but it's still missing a key component. And that is this real-time context piece of the puzzle. What does that mean? Well, basically, it's kind of like, how can we make Copilot aware of the external tools that we may need to connect to outside of our IDE, like our VS Code environment? So how can we make Copilot aware of our external databases? How can we show it the issues that are coming into our GitHub repositories and enable it to help us create pull requests for those issues? How can we connect it to the tools and resources that are not part of our IDE, but are still necessary to our projects?
Yeah, and I think stay in the flow basically, so you don't have to open up a bunch of different external tools, right? You want to get those real-time data. And those VS and VS Code are just some of the instances of tools that, you know, are using agents and LLMs as well. So this kind of causes a problem, right, Katie?
Exactly. Yeah. Huge problem. So the next piece of our puzzle is kind of like, okay, well, how did developers go about attacking and fixing this problem? Basically, they were coming up with all kinds of solutions to integrate with different external tools and capabilities. But as you can imagine, each new integration required a custom implementation, which led to all kinds of different extensions and plugins, which overall just increased maintenance and security, performance risks. It was kind of confusing and pretty difficult to scale. So you can imagine if you were developing an app and wanted to connect to different data sources or services, you would need to install a bunch of extensions or open several web pages, or in the case of some of these developers, just build custom solutions. So it all got pretty confusing and redundant, as you can imagine, James. And this is where MCP really came in as the standard to make this smoother and less confusing. So here we finally get to our what is MCP. MCP is a standard protocol that really allows you to connect your LLM to that real-time context, the data, tools, and resources that you need. So one way that we like to think about this is that it's kind of like USB-C or like a universal adapter, but for AI applications. So in the same way that a universal adapter would let you connect physical devices to a bunch of different physical accessories, all with the same cord, MCP allows you to do that with AI applications and connecting those to different data, tools, and resources. A key thing to remember here is that this is continuing to evolve and change as AI evolves and changes. It was initially created by Anthropic and has really been taken up by the AI community as a standard. All right, so now that's kind of our what is MCP. Let's take it to the next level. So there's really three parts of MCP that you need to understand. So first is our hosts. So these are programs like Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio or Copilot Studio. And these want to access that data and tools via the model context protocol. Then you have our protocol clients. May need a click forward one.
Oh, yeah.
But these maintain that one-to-one connection with the servers. And sometimes these clients are the same as the hosts, as you can see with Copilot Studio there. Finally, and this is probably the part you may be the most familiar with, we have our servers. These are lightweight programs that can expose specific capabilities through model context protocol. So you can see a couple examples of servers there. There's actually a ton of them out there, and you can build your own. And servers kind of let you do things like, for example, with the GitHub server, you can see and create issues, pull requests, all that kind of stuff directly from within your VS Code environment, for example.
Yeah, and I think what's important here too is that when we'll see today as we start to go through some things is that it's, not just our tools that are limited here by these hosts and clients. So things like Claude Desktop, actually the coding agent on github.com, for example, that's doing things autonomously. Obviously, there's tons of other, AI clients out there. And what's great here is that it's a single sort of interface in a way to communicate with these LLMs. And the most important part, and we'll get into it a little bit more detail, is that these servers provide at its root, its core, and we'll talk about it in depth and we'll see it here, is tools that it can call. So the ability for all intents and purposes to go off and then have the LLM take the data in the context and then execute actions on the user's behalf or gather data, query the database, query your GitHub issues, open a GitHub issue, query your Azure resources, right? And the cool part is here, this is no matter where you're at. So the Playwright MCP server, which is end-to-end testing, for example, will literally open a browser and click through the website, and then it can generate tests just using GitHub Copilot, for example, right? So they are able to communicate side by side with that LM. That's the power of it. So it's able to formulate how to make these calls in to get that rich data. So a great example is, connecting to like a data source, like a database or APIs that are out there to gather data when you're building this out. Or one of my favorite ones is like Figma, for example. We use Figma a lot here, Katie, I feel like all the time. I don't know if I know how to use Figma properly, but our designers do. But they have these beautiful designs. So Figma has an MCP server. It enables you in VS Code or in the coding agent or Visual Studio or any other thing that can talk to MCP servers. It enables it to communicate with Figma to go get the information from a design file and extract it back. And then Copilot can then take that and then turn it into code, right? So it's able to do that. And there's standard communication protocols, and we'll go a little bit deeper in this. We have some questions in there. There's multiple communication standards that MCP supports, including HTTP streaming, for example. That's there. So that is sort of like the capabilities that it has, right? So I think that's sort of like the important part of it is it's able to reach in and call these tools in multiple ways. And these servers, as we'll talk about, can be on your machine or remote. And we're going to see that today when we use those, actually.
Yeah.
And a good question here from Jose about MCP host versus client. We put this on here because, like, if you go to the MCP website, like, they'll see these three parts. And like you said, Katie, the hosts and clients are often the same. In fact, you'll see overlap here. But remember, like, VS Code and Visual Studio, right, are hosting Copilot, and Copilot is the thing that's actually maintaining the connection. It is hosting the LLMs, right? The VS Code and Visual Studio, right, are housing this. Or Claude Code, for example, is the host app, but also the client, right? So, but Windows, for example, which will have built-in MCP support that they announced at Build, will be able to not only like connect to MCPs, but also be MCPs itself.
Yeah. Exactly. Great explanation and great question. And make sure to keep those questions coming. We'll be answering them as we go.
Yes. And the best place also to getting started is the Model Context Protocol website. So I'll actually put a link here, just modelcontextprotocol.io. That's a great place to get started and do all these things, basically. Now, should we see it in action?
I think we should see it in action.
Okay. In fact, that's what the next slide says. It says
demo number 1.
Let's do it. Okay. I'm going to bring up my machine here. Perfect. Cool. All right. So I have VS Code here. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring this over so you can see it. But this is the second part. So we're already on step 2. We already did step 1. That was a setup, Katie. We did it.
Check.
So we're going to create a new application, but we're going to do it by leveraging MCP servers. So whether you have an existing project or you have a new project, for all intents and purposes, you need to be able to use not only Copilot to help you code, but also get information in real-time data. I think what's fascinating here too is it's not only developer tools, right? Things like like Claude Desktop or other agents that are out there and applications, that non-developers are using also have the capability of using all these MCP servers, right? So when you see the MCP server list, you're gonna, you know, not necessarily see everything that's for developers, right? There's ones for like turning on and off your light. Well, actually, you could like tell the LM to turn on and off your light. You can connect that, right? So which is really great. So we'll see that. And then additionally, it does allow you to like do these things from everywhere. So in this instance, we're going to build like this monkey application. It's gonna be kind of fun. It's just a new console application. And we're going to use 2 different servers. So I actually have a monkey MCP server that I build as sort of a reference. Now, in this case, it is, I like to call it a fictitious sort of MCP server, but the idea is that it could be connecting to a database. It could be authenticated as your user, right? That you're getting information so you can pull records from, that you can insert records from, and do a lot of other things. And it could be, a remote, API. It could be here, but in this case, it's just kind of returning local data in general, which is good. That's going to run on my machine there. And then I'm also going to use the GitHub MCP to help us create issues and update issues and create a whole bunch of new fun ideas as well. And you might be saying, well, the GitHub MCP, why would I use that, instead of just like adding the extensions, doing this stuff? Well, you'll see, because of the natural language part of it that enables the model to communicate and create actions for us. So this is what we're going to step through here side by side. So I'm going to pull this off to the side and we're going to follow along over here. And if there's any super pertinent questions, we'll have some time for Q&A as well at the end. So we'll go from there. How does that sound, Katie?
That sounds great.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project here. So you can do this via a .NET new console application, or you can come up here and I'm just going to search for console app.
Yeah. And I'm guessing if you all had a chance to check out the repos README, it'll tell you exactly what you need to get this set up. Here, James is definitely for sure using the C# dev kit extension for VS Code. But if you're a Visual Studio user, we're also going to have a stream for that sometime next week, I believe next Thursday. So you can check that out as well.
Totally. And if you just followed this along, it would be pretty much exactly the same too.
Yeah,
which is great.
Totally.
Including even connecting to the MCP servers, because it's like they look in the same spots. So I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call it monkey app. Okay. So I'm just going to open it there. I'm going to select that folder as where I want to create it. And I'm going to call this my monkey app. Now, I like to have these as different names. I actually believe that kind of helps the model know where to put code. I feel like it sometimes gets confused if it's like the same exact thing. So I'm just going to create the defaults here, monkey app, and then call it my monkey app over here. So we're there. Perfect. Amazing. Okay. So the very first thing I'm going to do is, because we want to interact with GitHub in this instance, I'm actually going to push the code to GitHub. So we're going to make this repository live on the internet, and we can see that this is just a hello world application. So we're going to make it a little bit bigger. Make this 20. There we go. Perfect. Big fonts. Perfect. Cool. So it's nothing. It's just a blank application. So perfect. The first thing I'm actually going to do on top of that is I'm going to add a new ignore file into my project. So I'm actually going to just open up the terminal here in the root of my project. And I'm just going to do .NET new git ignore. So even before I push it. So this is nice. So it's going to add a git ignore. This is built into the .NET templates there. So this gives you all the sort of things that you would want to not push to GitHub, like your debug and your OBJ files and things like that. So that's what we're going to do there. So easy enough there. So then what I'm going to do is go to the source control, and I'm going to just publish to GitHub. I'm logged in with my GitHub account. So I'm just going to say publish to GitHub. I'm going to make this the public repository. Cool. All right. And it's
public.
Making it public. It's on the internet. So first commit. It's doing a thing. And let's see if it is live. Open on GitHub. Perfect. Success. I'm shocked that I don't have a repo already called monkey app, because I feel like I should, but I guess I do now.
It's
so here
kind of crazy, actually. I'm surprised.
I'm pretty sure if you were to go into like my repositories and then just type in like monkey, I'm pretty sure it's in
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's a
You
lot
got a
of
zoo
there.
over there.
I do have a whole zoo. That's correct. So, which is cool. Okay. So now we have this. So we've pushed it up. We have our code up on GitHub. So beautiful. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to configure an MCP server. So I have this Monkey MCP server. So often I'll show you a few different websites that are out there. There's the Model Context Protocol website has a bunch of servers. If you actually go to code.visualstudio.com, in the very top, you'll see a big MCP button. And actually that gives you like a nice curated list of MCP servers. So you can kind of see there's one click install to get it inside of your VS Code. So you can see things like Microsoft Docs, Markdown. So you could convert PDFs to Word files and audio to Markdown, which is really awesome. A bunch of local image processing and OCR, like that's awesome. You could connect to Notion or Atlassian or Zapier, or your databases, So I think like this hopefully gives you some context, right, of doing this, of, connecting. If you had an intercom system or Webflow or PayPal system, you could like query this data directly inside of the chat, or connect to Azure DevOps, for example, inside of there, and then query those items and see what's open, what's assigned to you, and create a new branch off it and do those things. So like this is like really cool to kind of see this there. So I have my Monkey MCP server. So this open source example of how this is implemented. And down in the bottom, it says try it out. So there's a way of configuring this in VS Code or Visual Studio or Cloud Desktop or MCP clients that are out there. And there's a little JSON file here of what to do. And this is in the README that you can copy. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into, so there's the Solution Explorer here that we've seen from the C# Dev Kit, but also the File Explorer. So we can see the File Explorer, right, has the Monkey app over here. I'll make it extremely big. Katie. So we're going to use the File Explorer first. And in the root over here, I'm going to create a new folder called .vscode. Okay. And that actually gets created most often when you're debugging applications. And then I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to call it mcp.json. Now, this is going to create shareable. You can, of course, ignore this if you wanted to, but you can share this with your teams, MCPs that are shared everywhere, or you could ignore it as well and git ignore, for example, or you could check it into source control. You can also configure MCPs like user-wide across your VS Code instance. So if you're like, I'm using GitHub Copilot, or GitHub MCP server everywhere, I want it all the time, like I do, then, I would want that there. So you can also hit add server. So you can add Docker images or, run things locally or pip or NPM packages. We're just going to go ahead and paste this in. And this is often sort of like what you see on a lot of MCP servers. So this one here is telling us that this is the name that will show up inside of VS Code or Visual Studio. It's going to start it by running a command, which is a Docker command, and it's going to run specifically a run command on Docker to start my Monkey MCP server here, which is a container image. And it's going to run it in Docker. So if I actually pull up the chat over here, and I'm in agent mode here, I have all my different standard models here. We'll see that there's a little refresh, that there's a tool available. So it's basically said, hey, there's a tool available here. And what are tools? Well, there's a tool button, and a tool button are things that, for all intents and purposes, are things that the LLM can call into. So there's actually a bunch of built-in, like editing files, fetching files, running commands, running terminal commands. And we can actually see some from extensions. So things like Jupyter Notebooks, Python, Azure resources that are here. And we can see that there's the Monkey MCP server, but there's no tools. So I'm just going to hit refresh here. And that is going to then start my MCP server. And we can see that I have 5 tools, 3 prompts, and more, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then when I open this up, we can go back to tools, and we can see that we have new tools such as Get Monkey Business, Get a Monkey Journey, Get Monkeys, a whole bunch of good things here. So these are new tools that I can call, just like connecting to a Figma, getting a database entry, doing things like that, which is cool.
Yeah. Basically, every MCP server that you connect there will give you a new set of tools.
Yes. And some will have a lot, some will have a little. It just depends. And that's evolving. And you can create custom sets as well. We're not going to get into that. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to add the GitHub MCP server. Now, this is actually a remote MCP server. So this is in the README, but I'm just going to go down here and just add another. So this is just a JSON list. And this one is very, very small as far as configuration, because it doesn't have to run any commands. So here, this is running a Docker command, and this is communicating over standard IO. So it has a standard IO protocol that MCP servers communicate with the clients with. But in this case, this is going to use streamable HTTP and communicate with the GitHub MCP server. So again, I have just hit save here, and actually can start it from here too, which is cool. You can also go up to the top and type in MCP, and you can see things like list servers, there's trust things on here, there's adding servers, browsing resources, and there's a bunch of things in here. So you could list your servers, you can see one's running, one's stopped, where it's configured, for example. But I'm going to hit start, and it's going to start it up. And there's a bunch of tools that are available, which is nice.
68 tools.
Lots of tools that are available there. Yes.
A lot.
Lots of tools, which is good, and a prompt apparently, and more. Now, when you do this, it will probably authenticate you. And we had some questions about authentication. Like that just kind of worked. I think because I've authed at my core level before and I'm already logged in, it just automatically will authenticate me. Usually I'll get a pop-up, hey, do you want VS Code in the MCP server? There's a standard authentication protocol that MCP servers use that was created in partnership with Anthropic, Microsoft, and others out there. So it can automatically connect to OAuth services, enter ID, things like that automatically, pop up the native dialogues, or in even Visual Studio Code's case, it will pop up and say, hey, what GitHub account do you want to use? It has that integration there, which is really, really nice. Now, a good question is like, is everything exposed, right? Couldn't I just like connect to the GitHub API and do these things? Well, like not necessarily. Over here for GitHub, I have things like creating branches, issues, pull requests, deletes, getting commits, getting issues, getting issue comments. It can actually do a lot, and they have an ever-growing set of things, and I may not want all of these. So some MCP servers are sort of interfaces on top of APIs that specify maybe a smaller list of things that someone would want to do. Other ones, for example, are more defining and executing logic, right? So it's connecting to a database, for example. It may be, for example, in my case, generating and looking at a bunch of, fake monkey data, right? And returning that back. You might have it go query weather data for you in real time. You might have it grab that Figma file, right? So some of these things are APIs and some of the things aren't. So you kind of think about that when designing your MCP server. Okay, so we have things. We have our MCP servers set up, okay? So the next thing that I'm going to do is I am going to, this is what I do with every new project, Katie, is I put a custom Copilot instructions in it, and we're going to talk about that. Why?
Best practice.
Best practice. So I'm going to create another folder here, which is just .github, just like my .vs Code. And I'm going to create a file inside of that. I'm going to call it Copilot instructions.md. Now, the reason we have this is because every time I interact with GitHub Copilot in VS or VS Code, I want to give it some information about my project, maybe where the project lives, give it some context, how I like to code in general, right? So it's pretty smart. It'll figure it out. But in this case, like I have literally like a line of code. Like it's going to just do whatever it wants. So I have my little set of best practices here. So I'm going to zoom back out a little bit there. So up here, I'm going to say that this is a .NET 9 application, uses C#13. I'm going to say generate all the code inside the MyMonkey app project. So if you named it something else, you would need to change that here. And I'm going to tell it, hey, it might be a subfolder, things like that. Then I'm going to give it my GitHub account. So just James Montemagno, you'd put yours in there. I'm going to call it Monkey App. Now, the reason I'm telling it this is because let me just wrap this here. There we go. Boop. The reason I'm telling it this is because since I'm using the GitHub MCP server, it's going to try to like guess what it is. Like, I could query issues on open source repos, but I'm asking it to create an issue for my repo. I like to just tell it where my repo is. Then it always knows. That's just a James thing.
It never hurts to be more specific and give more context. Like you can also see there that James is putting some project context, the different coding standards that he wants, any suggested code to follow. These things, you know, are just helpful to make sure that you're getting exactly what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. So the first thing we're going to do over here, Katie, is I'm going to now just open up the Copilot, the chat here, the agent mode. So I'm in agent mode down here, we can see, and you can select any model. It works with any of these. All these models are tool calling. We're going to use GPT-4.1, unlimited free calls. So why not? So, but if I was to say, go grab me my open issues on this repo. Okay. And then it's going to go off and it's going to call. And what we can see here is the MCP server. So it called the GitHub MCP server and it sent information to it. So it figured out the information to send, which was this repo, monkey app, and then the state, which is open, and there's nothing here. And then it summarizes it for me. You know, I could go, get me issues from, get me the top commented issues from the Microsoft / VS Code repo. Just tell it that, right? So it's going to take this information. It's going to go take a look. It's going to call the GitHub MCP server. It's going to search for issues, pass it information, go and try to do this and search. And apparently it didn't. Oh, it didn't, due to permissions or API limitation. Oh, I see. Okay. So maybe that was a bad one in general.
But I think a nice thing here is that it's very transparent about exactly what it's doing. So
True.
In both of those examples, you can see the tool that it's trying to call and why it is able to do that or is not able to do that. You're getting that feedback so that you can adjust your prompt and make sure that what you're doing is able to be done.
Yes. Okay, cool. Maybe that's not actually a repo. The Microsoft / VS Code. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. Maybe it's somewhere else.
It's like, that doesn't exist. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's like, hey, so I ran it on the .NET MAUI repo, for example. And it's like, hey, here are the top issues that are coming back, the comments, things like that, right? This is powerful. It's summarizing this data. I could filter it by labels, by author, ones that I've created, XYZ, right? So it's pretty powerful because you're using that LLM to actually tap into it in general, which is really cool. Okay. So I'm going to create a new chat. I'm going to say, let's create a new issue on this repo. And I want it to be about the app we are creating today. It is a console app that enables us to see a bunch of monkeys. I can get details for a monkey, pick a random monkey. I'm thinking the model will be named monkey, and we should have some fun ASCII art in there. Add appropriate labels for this issue and outline steps needed to implement this in this code base. So I kind of give it a big prompt here, but I'm basically telling it, what I want it to do for all intents and purposes here. And now I can see exactly what it's doing, right? So it took all that data, and what it has now defined here is that it came up with a name. So implement a monkey console app with a fun ASCII art and interactive features. And then it outlined the entire body for me of everything that I may need. So following C# practices, what code I may need. It added a bunch of labels on here. And now it's going to go ahead and create this label or this issue on my behalf. And then it'll summarize it, right? So that's pretty neat. I don't have to leave my code flow in general, right? And if I go into the issues over here, let's see if it's here. I think they're not assigned to me. So let me go ahead and open it up. There we go. We can see it here of the exact issue that it created. So how many times have you been in your code flow where, and it added all those labels for me, where you're like, oh, I have this idea, but I'm working in a branch. I don't want to stop and do something. Now you just go and do things, right? If I was to manually type all these things, it would take me like forever, right? I could ask it to review and give me an outline. Let's iterate on the plan. But now I have like this entire thing that I'm like ready to go. I even got a thumbs up. Look at that.
Whoa.
Amazing. All right.
Thumbs up of approval. Yeah,
Approval.
that's exactly it. It's like, how can we reduce the context switching that you have to do in your daily workflow so that you can really stay focused and stay efficient, but also be able to capture these new ideas that you're having instead of like me circa a few months ago, just writing this crazy to-do list of like, oh, I guess I should do that later. But now you can just get it done.
Yeah. So, and then I could update. I could say, you know, update that issue with some fun ideas for this app. Right? I don't know. I'm just gonna tell. It's gonna like come up with stuff, right? So now it's gonna go like get the issue and get the issue details, and then it's gonna work and it's gonna grind, and now it's going to like add a comment in this case onto it. To have some ideas to what to do. So it's telling it to do a monkey parade, monkey sounds, a quiz mode, a name generator, and then add it on.
Parade. That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's there, like features like monkey of the day. Oh, I actually like that. Some Easter eggs, achievements, and things like that. Now it could like be like, you know what? Actually create individual issues for those with some light implementation details. Okay. So like now, so I'm just working, I'm like jamming on it. I'm like, oh, I have this idea. So now it's going to go off and now it's going to use the reference, and it has the chat history, right? So I don't really need to have it, you know, do some stuff, but now it's going to go off and it's going to go create a bunch of issues. So I don't know how many it's going to create here, but it's going to do a bunch. I'm doing this kind of
another
weird
thing. Like, don't be afraid to refine what you're asking if you don't get exactly what you were looking for the first time, or if it gives you something and you're like, oh, actually, like that would be better as separate issues. You can totally do that. It's no big deal.
And I want to point out here that it's telling you it's calling an MCP server, and I'm manually telling it that it's okay, right? Each time. You can also say allow for this session, allow for this workspace, allow always, right? So you're in control. So you don't always have to click continue, but you may want to in this case for creating GitHub issues or updating them and doing stuff. This one just created a bunch. It has a lot. So this repo has a lot of issues.
It said, oh, you want issues? You're going to get issues.
I got issues. It's got them all. So it's done all of them for me. And so I think golden monkey ASCII art, I don't even know what that is, but now it has it, right? So now it's also defined some information for me, which is cool. So that's sort of the power of using these things together, which is really neat. Okay. We just had a bunch of fun. So that's cool. Okay. So now what we're going to do is like write some code. And by I mean write, I'm going to prompt some code. So let's go ahead. I'm going to create a new chat here, clear out the context. So we're in fresh context. So the first thing that I want to point out here is that if I use pound, this will bring up all of the tools that are available to manually call. Okay. So I can do, and I can see get all monkeys, get monkey business, add issues, cancel, changes, anything that's available to me. So I can call them manually if I want to, just like I would add a file, right? So I could also do program. I'm applying and adding context in. So what I want to do is I want to ask it to first get me a list of monkeys that are available and display them in a grid with their details. Now, the model is going to have these tools available, and it's going to attempt to figure out what it's going to use, and we'll see if it gets it right, right? It may not. It didn't. So that's cool. I'm going to stop it. Stop. Undo. It didn't. Okay, cool. It looks like it didn't get it right. So that's okay. And that's okay. Yeah. Let me do a new chat. I'm going to say, get me a list of monkeys and display them here. Don't write code. There you go. Tell it what to do. Let's see if it does it in general. Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay. So this one did, these are just well-known monkeys. So this is just stuff, but I have an MCP server. I'll say, get them from the monkey MCP server, please. Okay. So what we're hoping here is that it calls into my monkey MCP server, which is great. And this is going to get a list of monkeys. So I had to be a little bit more specific. Each model is a little bit different, and it's querying through them in general. So here are the monkeys that are here. Now I could have also said hashtag get monkeys, and then use this and display it in a list or in a table with information, right? So I could do that. Perfect. So now this is gonna, call that get monkeys specifically in this case, and then it should display them back in a table for me. So you can explicitly call these tools in general. Oh, it actually decided to code for me. I gotta undo that again.
It doesn't. It's too eager.
It really wants to. In the chat. There we go. It's very eager. They have been changed. There we go. Perfect. So
perfect.
I am in agent mode. So it is trying to like do the things that I want it to do. Now I could change this. Like I could have just disabled, code chatting inside of it in general. So there's that. So then I could ask it a question. I could say, what would a data model look like for this structure? ? Show it in chat. And then it has that context. So it basically what it's done is it queried the MCP server, right? It got the list of monkeys, and it also knows all of that information that was returned. In fact, if you actually go back up to this one, we can see the output, right? So it returned all of this data in a just JSON blob. We saw the output. And then down here, we saw that information being displayed. Now it displayed some of the information, but we can actually say, oh, what would this look like? Okay, like here's what it would look like. Name, location. So this is the data scheme that I want it to create. So I'm going to say, okay, that looks good. Let's create a new file for this class, right? So now we're kind of connecting up in general to it, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now it has the monkey data. It's in a new class. I'm going to keep that. Perfect. Okay. And we can look at that monkey. And sure enough, there's our monkey. So connecting to that data source, getting it there. And some people say, oh, what if I have an API? What if I have this? What if you don't have an API? What if you don't have a data? What are these things, right? What can I do to get this data back and turn this into this, which is pretty cool. So kind of a nice way of doing that using that MCP server. So now I'm going to go ahead and open up my program CS, and I'm going to say, let's create a, random, an application to select random monkeys, right? So I'm going to say, let's update this application to enable users to randomly select monkeys. Well, actually, like what we need to do now probably is like have it create a monkey helper class, right? Like right now we have the monkeys, but we need to actually have the monkey app. So I think what I needed to do is like, before we create the class, I'll say, let's create a new class called monkey helper that is static. It should manage a collection of monkey data. I'm going to say include methods to get all monkeys, get a random monkey, find a monkey by name, and track access count to when a random monkey is picked. And I'll say the data for the monkeys should come from the monkey MCP data source sample that we just got. All right. So now it's going to go off, and there's a prompt that you can copy and paste into GitHub Copilot in the agent mode to go and do it. So hopefully I not only have our monkey, but we should have our monkey helper. We'll see if this pops up. I'm doing it live, Katie. So we'll see.
It was a big ask, but I feel good about it.
No, I did it. It's pretty quick. Let's keep it. Let's look at it. Okay, we got a static class. We got all the monkeys, monkey data. So pulling in that data, this is how I like rapidly iterate. So we got the monkeys. That's cool. Random monkey access count. We got a random get monkeys. It returns said monkeys. Gets a random monkey. Get monkey by name. Random access monkey counter. Beautiful. Just give me the code. All right. I love it. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create the monkey app. So let's say, let's update the app now to have a nice menu with the following options that will call into that monkey helper. There we go. I'm going to say 1, get details or list all monkeys. Okay. 2, get details for a specific monkey by name. 3, get a random monkey. And 4, exit app. I'm going to say maybe also display some fun ASCII art randomly. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Yes. So it's going to go off. I'm using a very weird screen mirroring tool, so sometimes it may glitch out a little bit, but we have it here. And let's see what we get. Did it. Well, ASCII art. Amazing. Okay. So here's our ASCII art. We have main. It's going to go off. It has a list over here, some random monkeys. We have a read line. We have a goodbye, which is nice. List all monkeys. So it's going to do a bunch of stuff. And it does look like it is getting the monkey by name. That's cool. Get a monkey by name. Get the stuff. All right, cool. Let's run it. And hit run. And we should get.
It goes.
I'm just going. Just
get us a monkey.
Get us a monkey. Okay. Nope. Up. All right. Cool. All right. We have said monkey here. Apparently some monkey eyes looking
really
at us.
Shy monkey.
Yeah. Let's say get all monkeys. All right, cool. So we have monkeys. It's in a crazy big mode. So let's go ahead and just do this. So yeah, we have a bunch of monkeys and a nice grid. That's nice. I like that. Let's get details for a monkey. It's going to ask me for a monkey name. So I'm going to say Mooch. That's my monkey. And then, yeah, sure enough, here's the details of all the monkeys, right? Coming back. Let's do a random monkey. Oh, I like how it has like random
little like expressions.
Yeah. So now this random monkey is a blue monkey. It was accessed 1 time. Do it again. We get a different monkey here. Let's make this terminal huge. There we go. Capuchin's been accessed 2 times. I think just because it's accessed by anything. Accessed 3 times for Henry. And then that, I think that's just like in general, how many times that. I could probably update to say specifically which monkey it was accessed. I think it's just tracking how many times we were called random, but could update that. But anyway, so we get all this information back, which is really cool, right? So we just like literally built an app doing this. And now we could say, okay, this is great. Okay, this is great. Let's go ahead and close issue number 1. Issue 1, because that's the first one that we created. So it's going to go off and there we go. So it's now going to go off, close that issue. Of course, I could commit, I could do fixes, I could do this stuff, but now it's going to close that issue. It's great, which is on there. So boom, good to go. So again, kind of that way of going and iterating in general of doing these things. Now, I do want to kind of like talk a little bit about other things that you could do. So you're like, okay, here's this monkey thing. We just created this monkey app, the monkey data, right? That's inside of it. But you can do kind of a lot more. So like this monkey sample thing is kind of like the idea of connecting to a data source. But you may have also noticed that there are, my things being all weird. There we go. All different options in here, like get monkey journey, get all monkeys journey. So what I did, Katie, was I added, you and I were thinking about this. We're thinking about what you said earlier, which is real-time data, right? This monkey data is kind of static, but you can imagine that this monkey data may change the population. But imagine that you were working as a zoologist and you needed to perform data analysis of monkeys that maybe you're tracking. You know, they have little trackers on like the different animals.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if this MCP server was not just returning just like, here's a bunch of monkey data, but it actually was able to give you information about a monkey's journey for the day.
Ooh,
yeah, like
okay.
it could get the GPS data, it could return it back. So imagine I said, get the monkey's journey for Mooch, right? Which is the monkey's name. So now this is going to call into the MCP server and it is going to go get the GPS data. It's going to go get the information about it and where this monkey was going. So here, for example, we can see that Mooch, we got her real-time data, where she was at, her start time, end time. The last trip she took was 0.43 kilometers. Here, she did some adventure blogging, some iPhone photography, some resting, some playing. And we can see like her energy moved up and down. She has a happiness level, a hunger level, a social level. That's pretty cool. I could say, okay, based off this, can you come up with a narrative of Mooch's journey? Right? So I could be like, here's a narrative. So boom. Okay, Mooch's day began in the heart of Seattle, right? And then it kind of like does a whole journey of like what this was doing. I could kind of track this out. Better yet, let me open up another version of this where I have my Monkey MCP server. I did the exact same thing, but what I asked it to do was to take that file and then put it into a JSON blob. So here's all that data coming from the MCP server. And then what I did is I asked Copilot in the agent to create a Jupyter notebook so I could analyze the data. So I took the data coming from the MCP server, put it here, and then created this journey for the monkey, right? So it installs a bunch of packages, looks at things, it loads the data. And this monkey here went off and it summarizes, this was Mooch, it was Mooch, had 15 path points, activities, duration, different activity it was doing. It prepared the geolocation data on here, has all the points, and then it plotted it on a map. So here's like Mooch's journey, right? So I could actually see that. So calling into that MCP server to get that real-time data, I could be analyzing real-time information back in that. It's a seamless flow. In fact, I can even customize the map visualizations, right? So I could see the different activities that it's doing. And then I, can see like, oh, what it's doing. It went Mooch went climbing, for example, for 7 minutes. Mooch went on a waterfront stroll in Seattle, right? So these things that Mooch was doing.
Mooch is living the life.
Mooch living her best life all the time. And then I could do other things like visualize Mooch's health data, right? So I think that's like a really cool example of seeing this stuff sort of in real time happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously you created all the tools for this, and folks are asking for that link as well. So we'll have to throw that in the chat. But it just shows you, like you said, and like we initially emphasized, you can really pull that real-time context in addition to static context that you may have.
Exactly, totally. And there's tons of use cases for it. Like and these are just some to kind of tap into. And again, some of these things that we're building are things that we might be using VS Code, but could use in other MCP clients out there as well, which is really cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's go deep dive.
Deep dive. Okay. So what we kind of just saw, and we've been recapping a little bit, is that James created a new project, and we saw how we could integrate the GitHub MCP server to query and create different issues, close those issues once we finish the implementation, all from within our VS Code environment. So that's one of the cool kind of powers or use cases of MCP. You can do all of that stuff directly from within your IDE. We also connected to a data source. In this case, it was the Monkey MCP, which we're going to share out in the chat so you can really look behind the scenes. Yeah, see what that looks like. And we exposed different data about monkeys that we use to create this application. And then James went crazy and showed us all of that awesome real-time data and how you can pull all of that in. So we kind of mentioned the word tools as we were doing that. Everything that we used in that last demo was a feature of MCP called tools. So these are kind of like functions that the LLM can invoke to perform actions or get data, but it's not the only thing that you can do with MCP servers. It has more features, including resources and prompts. And we're going to go a bit deeper into each of those different things. So first off, tools. These are really the core of MCP servers today. They let you get data, update data, or perform actions. So this is what James was showing when he was able to kind of get that data with all that monkey data and also perform actions on GitHub. So He also mentioned kind of before going into that demo that there's a lot of other use cases you can do with these, including things with smart home and music services, or for developers. There's a ton of super developer focused MCPs like the Playwright MCP. And you're seeing a screenshot of that here. And that lets you really navigate and explore your website through natural language. So there's all kinds of different MCP servers with a ton of tools. I think some of the ones we were looking at, James had like 68 tools or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
super, super integrated there. All right. A really cool thing about tools is that you have a ton of control over these. So you can configure them per project or system wide. You can also directly select which tools that you want to use when you're making a chat request. So James was doing that when he was kind of using that hashtag or the pound symbol. I saw some discussion in the chat about which one you guys prefer to use.
If you say pound, is it the British? Is it the pound currency? You know what I mean? It's
true. It's a little confusing, right, I suppose. Let's say hashtag for now, but you can use whatever you prefer. I don't care. And then you can also mention. You can also create user-defined sets of tools. We mentioned that, we didn't really show it, but for example, you could have like a research set of tools and a coding set of tools and jump between these things easily, depending on the kind of task you're doing.
Yeah, and I think beyond that, the other ones that I want to show off, and we'll go into the code, the same exact project, is that Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio expose all of the different functionality that MCP servers can expose. So another one are resources. You can think of resources as, instead of your MCP server having to call a tool to go get some data, you can attach context that is there. So for example, the GitHub MCP server enables you to add context like a repo or an issue directly onto it. So it doesn't have to query it. It just knows how to get it automatically. So you don't have to make the call. But additionally, it could be images, it could be data entries, it could be documents, it could be files. Like for the monkey data, I could just have like the monkey schema, or I could specify and have the user do things. So this is a way that is more application driven. Like the other one is sort of the LLM driven. This is the application driven model of this. So this is nice when you are building and using MCPs, that this context is available to add. And you can add it just like you add other context, like you might attach an image today. So you can say, okay, I want to attach this file, this JSON blob. So you might be working with, I don't know, like maybe like Sentry, like for data crashes, and it could expose as an MCP resource a crash log, right? You could say, boom. So that way it doesn't have to call the backend. It would attach it as context. So you don't have to fill the entire buffer, which is very nice. So that's a great use case for using resources. And in addition, the one that I'm really excited about and I'm excited to see grow is prompts. Now, prompts are really great because you already today can define prompts files, which are user controlled. So you create a prompt file that's reusable. So instead of creating, here's how I create a test and asked agent mode to create the UI test or end-to-end test or end unit test or X unit test in this way for this thing, you have a prompt that defines your sort of best practices and what you want to do, right? Your user controlled, you can reuse them. Your entire team can build these best practices. And now MCP servers can also return prompts as well. So the MCP server creators can define a set of best practices or reusable prompts, but they can be dynamic. So for example, the dynamic resource could take in some information about programming language, about the thing that you want to test, and it could generate a specific prompt for you. So it's really nice. And they're defined in the same way with not pound or hash commands, but with slash commands. So things like welcome or setup, or you need information, and you can define these things. A great one here that we kind of see is this context aware is like, hey, migrate the database, like, and it would provide the prompt file to the actual agent, which is cool. So let me show you what that looks like really quick here inside of the exact monkey app that we built. So the first thing is that you can add context. And when you do that up here, you're going to see, there we go, context, open editors, files, folders, screenshots, problems, tools. You'll see MCP resources. When you tap on that, it's going to look at all of the MCP servers and see what it exposes, right? So, oh, interesting. Like here's repository content for a specific commit, for a specific tag. Like these are things that the GitHub MCP server is opening. But I also have one that's like, yeah, get the details for the baboon, right? And it just returns and attaches here the baboon information that I can open. And sure enough, like there is the information. So that could have been a database record. It could have called it could call code to do something, right? But the model didn't need to do it. The MCP server just did it automatically, which is really cool. I could come in and I could say, add context, resources, and I'll say monkey, and it can also ask me information. So here it's asking for a name. So I could say Mooch over here. And now it's going to add the Mooch context and add this information back. And obviously it would do validation if it was proper or not, right? So here I could say, if I had this closed, I could just say, here's the context. I could say, summarize Mooch here. So it should have this context of Mooch. We'll see if it does it. And it should use the reference here. Mooch is an adorable monkey from Seattle. So it didn't need to make an MCP server call. It just has the resources there available. So that's really, really nice in general. Now, the other thing are those prompts. I don't have any prompts, but if I hit / here, we're going to see that there's a bunch of things built in. So there's things like clear and save and list and a bunch of other prompts that are here. But there is one that is like get monkey prompt, get monkey prompts. So if I say get monkey prompts, it'll ask me for a name of the monkey. I'm going to say baboon. Okay. I'm going to insert as text here, and it's going to now just fill in the prompt. So it's going to provide details for the monkey named baboon. So it just kind of gives me a prompt best practice here. In this case, it's just it has the information in the source code. So that's how I'm going to call it, but that's fine. So it has it there, which is cool. But another one, let me just open a new chat, is the get monkey story. And the get monkey story gets a monkey story based on their journey. So let's do one for Mooch. And here, these can also take things as text or as a command. I'm going to say text. And let's name the story, the type of story. Do we want action, adventure, mystery, or comedy?
Mystery.
Mystery. Okay. So again, I've defined these inside my Monkey MCP server. So it's going to say, let's get the journey for the Mooch. Summarize the journey quickly and then write a short mystery story based. I typoed it. Doesn't matter though. Monkey's journey for fun for the family and kids. So I'm going to hit go. All right. Oh, someone's at the door and my dog's going to go crazy, but here we go. So now it's going to run the MCP command that is get a unique journey with creative activities and health stacks for it in general. So this is kind of powerful. I'm going to hit continue here. And I'm just going to open this bigger. Perfect. Cool. So the first thing that it did, and this is kind of like, imagine you can have a two-way conversation back and forth. So it says, here's a quick summary of the journey. Mooch started in Seattle, did the stuff, but here's the journey. Mooch and the mystery of the missing banana. Wow. One sunny morning in Seattle, Mooch the monkey set on an adventure with his trusty iPhone. He snapped dazzling photos of the city, captured the sparkle of the water and the hustle of the market. But just as Mooch was about to enjoy his favorite snack, a big yellow banana, it vanished. Determined to solve the mystery, Mooch followed a trail of tiny banana peels along the waterfront, strolled past the friendly ducks, waved at the ferry boats, and even stopped to take a selfie with the curious seagull. At last, Mooch found a giggling squirrel munching on the missing banana. Instead of being upset, Mooch shared a laugh and snapped a photo of his new friend. Together, they finished the banana, strolled along the water, and promised to meet again for an adventure. And so Mooch's day ended with a full heart, a happy tummy, and a phone full of memories ready for the next adventure. Wow.
Wow.
Amazing. So all I did in that case, right, is I defined the prompt that was there, and then it called the MCP server, returned all the data, and then the LLM took that data and then interpreted it to turn that into a journey, right? So it's kind of calling multiple tools all together, right? My MCP server didn't create the story. The coding agent did here. The agent mode did. The LLM did, because it has the data exposed based on what I asked it to do.
Totally. And I think tools are probably the most familiar feature to everybody watching right now, but we are getting a good question based on your explanation, James, of like somebody's saying they're not super sure about prompts and resources and how you would really kind of use them for a real use case. They're saying like, it does seem cool that you could prevent some typing, but what else would we really use this for? Or what's the
Yes.
intention?
So if you go over to like github.com/github/awesome copilot, this is a pretty great repo. I'll drop a link in the chat. This is a lot of great use cases for custom instructions, reusable prompts, and custom chat modes. So reusable prompts are really cool. So for example, like you can have reusable prompts, in this case, one for like Azure cost optimization, Azure resource diagnostics, a comment code generator, architectural decisions, create a GitHub issue for specification, create an implementation plan. There's ones for like C# async best practices, things that can be reused in general. So the prompt might be create this unit test for this thing with these instructions, right? So my prompt was pretty small, but you can imagine one being much larger. So for example, going into, there's tons of it in here as well. I don't know, which is crazy. I'm going to go in and like I'm going to tap on a random one. It's probably not going. Let me see if I have like a good like Azure cost optimizer. So this is a big prompt, right? In a flow. So for example, this is a huge prompt that's doing a bunch of stuff, right? And you wouldn't want to do that. So it's reusable, huge things, even as a checklist of things that it's doing, right? So you could do this. The Playwright MCP server, for example, has a prompt that tells it not only how to like explore and use it, but how to use the best practices to create a test and what to do, for example.
Yeah, exactly. It's helping you get the best possible output without having to necessarily keep all of these things in your mind. Like you can refine your prompt with just this pre-made prompt here.
Yes. Cool. All right. So that's a quick overview of the additional things that are exposed. And they've been in the spec for a while. However, they're a more recent addition into the MCP server support in VS and VS Code. So take a look there. Okay.
Exactly. Oh. So that kind of concludes that part of our deep dive into the MCP features. At this point, we've seen how to set up and use MCP servers, but we haven't really talked about how and where they're running. And I have seen a couple of good questions about that in the chat. So sorry I didn't answer them, but we're going to answer some of them right now. So first place these can run are just locally on your machine. And that can be as an app or inside of a Docker container like we saw in our example. And that way they can talk to data sources locally. Another way is that they can be calling web services, like with our GitHub MCP server example, when it's gathering and creating those issues for you. And they can also be run fully remotely over server sent events. And you might hear these called SSEs. So these remote servers can be run in Azure Functions or Container Apps or App Service and be managed by API Management and API Center, which are optimized for these remote servers.
Exactly. And actually, the GitHub MCP server started as a container. So like you said, they could be an app. So it could be like a .NET app. It could be a .NET app, a Python app, a Java app, anything like
anything.
It has,
yeah.
There's the MCP SDKs for basically every programming language that can run on your machine. But for interoperability, containers are often a great option. So in my case, GitHub originally started as a Docker image that you could pull and run locally, and then we would call to the GitHub APIs. In this case, it's now a remote one as well, over server side events or HTTP now as well, which is a newer part of the spec, which is great to see. And then you can also do things like use API management or API center and actually expose your existing APIs out into the world, which is cool too. Should we build an MCP server?
I think we should build one. We've got a good 15 minutes left plus some. Let's do it.
Challenge mode. All right, let's do it. Okay, so first thing is that there are tons of official SDKs. In fact, there's even more than this. There's like a Go one, a Swift one, all this stuff. Microsoft is the owner and the maintainer of the official C# SDK. And actually, we use it internally to build tons of MCPs and also the VS integration to be a client for MCPs. So communicating with MCPs. Also, you can do that in the C# SDK, and that's how VS works, which is cool. So we're going to use the C# SDK. But as Katie said, if you have friends in other programming languages, there's going to be Let's Learn MCPs in all a bunch of different programming languages and spoken languages too. So like I said, there's a bunch of SDKs, and the C# SDK, open source on GitHub, has the ability to be not only clients, but also servers. So a client is like, if I wanted to integrate into my application the ability to connect, make that connection to MCP servers, for example. A good example of this is obviously GitHub Copilot or Claude Desktop, right? They're the clients that are there, but you might integrate into your application ability to connect and configure MCP servers, maybe that you're building at your company, for example. And additionally, the MCP servers themselves have several ways of exposing the APIs. So local for standard IO transport, the transports that they use, that's kind of what we'll do today. And that's actually how my Monkey MCP server works. That Monkey MCP server also has another one, which is server send events or streamable HTTP. And those allow you to do remote servers, right? So you give it an endpoint, it's deployed somewhere, boom, you're totally good to go, right? So you have that information there. So you can build both of these, which is awesome. Cool. There's a few NuGet packages. The first.
We're losing.
Uh-oh, am I back?
You're back or I'm back. I don't know.
Okay.
Something happened.
Okay.
I couldn't do anything.
Okay.
We're back.
Perfect. All right. There's a few MCP servers, NuGet packages, so that are there. There's actually 3. There's the core. There's which with both of the other ones used. So the Model Context Protocol, that is the standard IO, and then Model Context Protocol ASP.NET Core, which is the HTTP and server send event ones too. So those are available there. Okay. So how do you get started? Well, I'm going to show you code, and then we're actually going to do it. It's really simple, actually. You can just create a new console app, and then you add those NuGet packages. They're pre-release packages. You're totally good to go. And then you update your program CS. And it's pretty simple. You create a new application builder. You add in some services such as the MCP server, the transport you want to use, and you can even have it automatically scan your assembly to find the tools that are in it, and then you run it, and that's it. And that's what would run inside of the container, for example, or just on your machine as a .NET global tool, for example, which is pretty cool. And then you want to create and expose these tools, prompts, or resources. So for example, what they have in documentation is like an echo tool. You would expose this class as a server tool type, so it would know how to scan and look for these things. And then you expose tools. So you can have one that says echo that just outputs exactly what you put in. You could have one that's reverse the echo, right, and reverses the string. And notice that the parameters are things that the LLM will figure out and pass directly into the tool itself. And you can have descriptions, and those descriptions are important because that's what the LLMs use specifically to do that, which is great. So it's really simple. So let's go ahead and build one. Katie, we're going to try to do it.
We're going to do it. We're not going to try. We're going to do it.
It's happening. Okay. So part 3 is what will be on here. I'll drop a link into the chat. Boom. So we're going to create a new project. All right. So just like I did before, I'm going to say new project. And Katie, I think what we're going to do is create a new MCP server. And this MCP server, we used to have this, we used to have like some weird internal tool that we use all the time. But I thought about this for me and my wife, even we both work from home. It's having an MCP server that can help us give us like food recommendations for lunch, because we're always like figuring out what we want to eat for lunch or for dinner. So I figured we could create one that's called like lunchtime. And then what it would do is like know about the lunches in my area, spots that I like. I could add some, remove some, and then it like pick a random spot for us to go eat lunch. So like anyone could customize this.
That would be a lifesaver for me, honestly. I get the worst like inability to make a decision around what I want to eat for lunch. So
yeah,
solves a real world need.
Yeah, you're coding. What do you want for lunch? And I got time. Boom, right? And imagine you're a food company and you're like, oh, like you could order it from VS Code. That'd be amazing. So we're going to create a new console app. Now, we'll say, I think we have some exciting stuff happening in the next few weeks where there'll just be like templates for this stuff, but we're just going to do a new console app. Now I'm going to create a new folder over here. and it's going to be called, let me make sure I don't have one. Okay, cool. I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to call it lunchtime. And then lunchtime today is just going to be an MCP server. So we're going to call this project lunchtime MCP. So maybe in the future, I want to build like a website or a console app or something else, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the default. So lunchtime, and then lunchtime MCP. So here we go. And here's my folder, Explorer. Boom. So hello world. We're back at hello world, Katie.
We're back.
Now, at this point, we need to install some NuGet packages. I'm just going to copy the ones that we need here. So I'm just going to copy those in, and we'll take a look at them instead of like adding each NuGet manually. Mm-hmm. So the ones that we need are the model context protocol. And right now I think they even have a newer version, but this is at least the one that there we go. Okay. And then I'm adding system text JSON because we're doing some JSON stuff. And then I'm going to add this Microsoft Extensions hosting because we're doing the standard IO. So we need a hosting platform for this to work, basically. Okay. So now what we're going to do is go back to our program CS in here. And I'm just going to delete that code and just put it in there. So this was code that I just showed Katie from the slides. So it's just creating an empty application builder host because it's going to be running locally. It's going to add the MCP server, which is coming from the MCP library, and we're going to use standard IO server transport. Now, this is also where I could add HTTP and streaming and things like that if I had the other packages, but this is going to create the core infrastructure. And actually, if you do a dot here, we can see that there is a bunch of commands like with prompts, with resources. This is like with stream server transport, with tools from assembly. I'm going to show you how to not have it scan the assembly, but define the tools that you want to expose inside of here, which is cool. Okay. So a few things that we need to do is first and foremost, create like the data, just like we did the monkeys that this MCP server is going to use. So because I don't have a real, I guess I could like query like Google Maps or Apple Maps API or some API out there. That's what maybe I would do in a real app. I'd be like, oh, I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in Seattle. Like, go find me lunch spots nearby of this type. We're going to use some hard-coded data because that's my jam in general. And this hard-coded data was for West Hollywood, where we ate lunch one time, Katie. And I believe that GPT-4.1 just found random spots that are in West Hollywood, but you could customize it. But I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it restaurantservice.cs. Boop. And it's empty. And I am going to, I put it in the wrong place. I'm going to drag it into the project. There we go. So it should live side by side the program, like how VS Code told me that I put it in the wrong spot. I'm just going to copy this code in because this code doesn't matter. I mean, it's a lot of code, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, Katie. Trust me. I swear. Yeah.
I believe you.
Yes. Okay. So what does this code do? I'm glad you asked, Katie. This is my restaurant service, and it has a data that it's going to load. So if I go to load data here, we're going to see that it's going to see if there's a file that exists. Also, it's going to create a file for restaurants and how many times I've visited the restaurant in general. That's here. So if it has one, it's going to load it. If not, it's going to seed the data. So up here, we should see, where's it at? Okay, so it's going to get the data, do this, load data, create the directory. If it has no restaurants, it's going to initialize with trendy restaurants and save the data. So.
All right. Trendy. I like it.
It's trendy. So these are all trendy spots in LA from what I've heard on the internet from GPT-4.1. So if you're in West Hollywood, then maybe some of this. I feel like I know the Ivy maybe, or
I feel like I've heard of some of those.
I have a friend named Craig, so I assume that's his restaurant. We'll see.
Probably.
But you could imagine that this is like real-time restaurant information with reviews and things like that, or maybe they're ones that you want. So maybe you don't want real data. You just want to add them yourself into there. So you could replace this list trendy data with anything that you want. Just ask Copilot to update it based on where you live. So all this is going to do, just like our monkey helpers that we saw earlier, let's go to the top. We have some methods we can call. So get restaurants, add a restaurant here, pick a random that's a random restaurant. It's going to then track the restaurants here, save the data out, get visit stats. So again, this is just like, this is my core business logic. This might be in a shared project. This might be, something that you have that's available. Maybe this is calling your backend server. Maybe this is calling a database, right? Your user shouldn't care about where the data is coming from. It should just care, that it can do the thing. Okay, awesome. So that's what this is doing in general. I even have this like get formatted visit count, which is nice. Okay. So that's all the data, and we can see the data types and everything down at the bottom for restaurant visit info, restaurant data from the formatted stuff. It's all in here. It's all great. So that's just the service that we have. Okay. So now what we want to do is actually like develop our tools. So I'm going to create another file here. I guess I can do it here inside of my C# SDK. It's a little bit nicer. If I hit add file, I'm going to add a class. I'm going to say restaurant tools. So you could have restaurant prompts, restaurant tools, restaurant resources, anything like that. That's here. So there's our tools. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to add a few using statements. I'm going to say using system.text.json. Perfect. I'm going to say using model context protocol .server. So we're going to add that in. That looks good. And then what we're going to do is come in and I'm going to append onto here MCP server tool type. So this is defining that this is a tool type that I'm going to expose to my API. So if it was scanning, it would look for these in general. Now, the only thing I need to do beyond that is get access to that service. So we're going to use dependency injection. I'm just going to copy in some code here. There we go. Just like, oops. There we go. Move this over. So we have our restaurant service. It's going to inject it in and we'll be good to go. So now what we can do is actually go back to our program CS and I could say with tools. There you go, with tools. There we go. And I'm going to say restaurant tools, just like that. And of course, I'll need to bring in that namespace. So now when we boot up our MCP server, it's going to look for that there. Mm-hmm. I can also say builder. There we go. It already knows because it's smart that I want to add the restaurant service. So it's going to use a standard dependency injection, which is super powerful. So we can get ready to go. Okay. So the first thing here that we want to do in our tools is define some tools. Okay. So I'm just going to copy and paste it in because it's like such minimal. Actually, I'm not even going to paste it in. I'm just going to let that. It's close. It's close. It's close. I'm going to copy and paste it in here so you can kind of see it. Okay. So this is like super minimal. Let me go ahead and add this. There we go. System component model. Perfect. Okay. So this is me defining a method that I'm going to expose as a tool, and I'm going to give it this description. So get restaurants, get a list of all restaurants available for lunch. And what this is going to do is it's going to just simply call our restaurant service and just send it back as JSON. I don't even know if I have to actually serialize it as JSON. It might just automatically do it, to be honest with you, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to even use, some of our best practices of using our system text source generators there, which is great. So we have a tool. We have a tool that's exposed. Our first tool. So let's do another one. Let's do, yeah. Okay, cool. Let's add a new one to the list. Sure. All right. All right, cool. Copilot knows. So that's good. All right. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so it fits on the screen. Perfect. Okay. So this one, I'm just going to verify it's correct. So it's an MCP server tool, description, add a new restaurant to the list. It's going to ask for the name, the location, and the food type. And it gives these here. Now I could also give these descriptions. So actually like in the sample that I have, you can add additional descriptions onto each of the entry points. So if I wanted to, for example, I could just go ahead and add these in. So using these descriptions, and that helps the LLM know a little bit more what these properties are. Location's nice, name's nice, food type, it would figure it out. but I can give it those additional context, right? As Katie said earlier, context is everything. So super simple. So here it's going to add the restaurant and then return the restaurant back. That's pretty cool. Let's do another one. We do want to pick a random restaurant. I don't know how it knows what I want to do.
So intuitive.
So intuitive. Cool. So it's going to pick a random restaurant, and it added one back in there, which is kind of cool, which is nice. Now, I think that this one's pretty good. However, I actually like my code better anyways. So I'm actually going to replace this here with the one that I have there, which is nice. So I'm going to say selected restaurant. There we go. Boom. Oops. Say restaurant.
And this code is all in the part 3 of that repo. So if you're following along, you can find it there.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to copy this again. I'm going to replace this one more time. My keyboard is acting up, which is not cool. Hold on. Sorry, guys and gals. Just one more time. Perfect. All right. I'm just going to say perfect. Okay, cool. So we're going to have our selected restaurant. It's time for lunch. It's going to do a thing in general. And then I guess I will be best practice. If it's null, I'll return no restaurants available for lunch. And that would be super sad in general. Okay, cool. All right. So the last thing we're going to do is just get some visit statistics. So again, I'm just defining my tools. And this one here is going to just get statistics about how many times I've eaten at different restaurants. So get formatted visits, it returns it back. So, you know, the tool calling is really simple here because we created that service, right? That's really helping us get access to these different things. So that's kind of nice. So we have these services. They're really small. They're just calling off these tools. I could add prompts. I could add resources about the restaurants. I could add one, one that was like adding new restaurants or querying new restaurants to do different things in general. So yeah, we have our tool good to go. Let me just go ahead and build it. Make sure I built it right. I'm going to say build. Let's make sure that it builds the project with our tools. All right. Awesome. So we have it. It looks like it built good. Nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run it. So we're not just going to run it as a console app in general. I'm going to go into a new terminal down here. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say ls and see that I'm in my solutions. Let me cd lunchtime MCP into it. And we have our file. So again, I'm just going to do a .NET build. And that should just build it. It already should be built, but it should be super built. Now we can run our application as well. And we can connect it to VS Code, but we can also use something called the MCP inspector here. So the MCP inspector enables you, it's a Node.js application. And the first thing you do is install it using npm install global model context protocol inspector. And this is one from the Anthropic team, and it's an inspector tool that helps you connect to MCP servers and explore them. So I have it installed. So I'm going to go ahead and say npx inspector run. Computer is so mad at me right now for some reason. There we go. So paste that in.
It wants lunch.
It does want lunch. And it's going to say, I'm going to give it a command that I'm going to run, which is .NET run. So in this case, I'm going to say, hey, when I try to connect to it, run this command, which is .NET run. And that's why I'm inside of the project folder specifically. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. Okay. And that's going to now boot up this MCP inspector for us. Now, what's cool is that this uses like authentication tokens. So it's on your machine. It's going to tell you it's up and running. And it's going to give you this open the inspector with the token that's pre-filled. So I'm going to click on that and bring it over. Here we go. Perfect. And now we can see that I have the MCP inspector. This is version 0.15. And you have the different transport types that you can test. And it's going to run the .NET run command. And I'm going to say connect. And fingers crossed, everything in my demo works.
Connect.
Yeah, and it should be doing stuff. So things are outputting here that it is trying to run and it's receiving events and commands, and perfect, it did it. So it's connected here, and I can now execute things. So we can see that there's prompts, resources. It says that there's only tools. So I can say list tool, which is cool. And we can see the history here. So I can do get restaurants, and I can run that tool. And now, boom, it's running that tool, right? Which is really cool. I can then pick a random restaurant, run the tool, and then boom, it's right there. And now I have this restaurant and this information. So this is the raw stuff coming back from it, right? So that is what is happening there, which is pretty cool. Now, this is a great way of testing it. So I can pick another random restaurant. I could do add restaurant, and it would look and say, here's all the information. So this is a great way of understanding what the LLM is going to receive back and look at, right? So those descriptions are all being piped down, which is super nice.
Yeah, definitely check this out. I'm also going to send a link in the chat that is a super duper thorough beginner's tutorial that includes a little bit more information around this tool as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to disconnect for now. And what I'm going to do is one last thing here, which I think will be fun, is I'm going to go in and I'm going to go into the file explorer, and I'm going to add a .vs code folder again. So I'm going to say .vs code, and I'm going to add an mcp.json there. And I'm going to go now, and I'm going to right click on my project, and I'm going to say copy path. I'm going to say add server, and I'm going to say command standard IO. And I'm going to say .NET run -- project. I'm going to go ahead and pipe in the path to here. So this is a good way of testing locally. I'll say lunchtime. So now this is what it looks like. It even escapes the things for me automatically, which is cool. And I can see I have 4 tools. I'm running it here. And VS Code has this MCP developer mode. So it can look when you're changing files, it'll start and it'll restop it automatically for you. So now, for example, I can go in, I'll say, let's go to 4.1. I'll say it's lunchtime. Get me a lunch spot to get lunch, please. Let's see if it does it. It's going to pick a random restaurant, Katie.
Nice.
I continue.
Where are we eating?
Yes,
Craig's.
Craig's. We're going to Craig's. It's right there. Perfect. I could say, okay, awesome. Can we add a new restaurant into our lunch options? Go find some popular sushi spots in Seattle, like 2 of them, and add it in. See what happens. So perfect. Food type is sushi. Shiro sushi. That's very expensive sushi. Sure. I was on a Netflix documentary. What was I going to do? Sushi Kashabi. I don't know if I know that one. I do know my sushi places usually. So now we've added those too, which is cool, right? So we're getting this in a loop here. I'll say, get me a list of the lunch spots. And let's see if it returns it back. Get restaurants. Amazing. And now we have them here. And we have our new spots in Seattle, right? So we could have this. Imagine that, my team deployed this MCP server. We could add authentication. We would do this. And now we're all jamming on lunch, even though we all live in different cities. Woo, we did this. Woo. It happened.
Speed run.
Speed run. Bam. Amazing. Cool. All right. Go ahead and stop this and do that. Now, a great question here is again, would I just expose a Swagger API? We get that question all the time. We got some questions in the chat, right? Oh, why don't I just have an API, just expose it? You can totally do that. That's what API Center does. It'll help you, go off and expose your APIs as an MCP server, right? That these things can connect to. The problem is that there's a bunch of different ways of connecting to things in general, and having a standardized way of everything calling this, right? Using a Swagger definition, yes, that is one way to expose data and to call things, but there are many ways. So you need a standardization way that these LLMs can call into these tools, prompts, and other things, right? So that's the important aspect of it, is being able to standardize the way of doing it. Yes, Swagger and APIs and REST is one way, but what about GraphQL, right? That's not going to work for you, right? You need the standardized way of doing this. I also try to add every single different protocol into the sun, but this standardizes the way of doing it. But there are great services of doing that and putting things back there as well. Good question from Praveen. Errors, you would just return an error back as an error message and the LLM would figure it out for errors propagation there. But Katie, there's a lot more happening at Microsoft. So at Microsoft, we have a ton of investment in MCPs across the board from start to finish, from MCP clients and hosts integrated throughout just about everything that you can possibly think about, including VS and VS Code and Foundry Agent and Windows. We build tons of great tools and have partnerships with tons of amazing companies and standardization in this process. So we work with partners. We've announced standardization of registries for MCPs. And of course, you can build and deploy local and remote MCPs with things like functions or APIM, and of course, the C# SDK, all building on that foundation of the MCP protocol that was started and run from Anthropic and the sort of like board, I guess, of like people that are on the MCP board in general, which is really awesome. So big investment across the board. And you've already seen tons of MCP announcements as well.
Totally. I feel like that slide, we needed like a horn. There's a lot going on and there's a lot to learn. This was just a taste to give you that foundation level knowledge about what an MCP even is and how you can use it and how you can build your own server. But we do have a lot more coming up all around MCPs. And in particular, I'm super excited about our MCP Dev Days event. This is going to be a 2-day event at the end of the month on the 29th and 30th. You can register at that link right there. And here we're really going to be exploring the whole MCP community. Especially on that first day, we're going to talk about what we're doing, what other folks in the community are doing. And on the second day, we're really catering to the builders. We're going to talk more about building MCPs and all that good stuff. I know James is going to be there and helping and hosting. James,
you'll be there.
You'll
be there.
I might be there.
And we're going to have amazing folks from these partners, from Anthropic, from Neon, from arcade.dev, like a bunch of amazing companies that are building MCPs, supporting the MCP ecosystem and building on in the foundation. So you'll see really deep dives into a lot of your common questions about RAG, around authentication, around deploying these mechanisms and using them and how people use them in real life, which is really great to see. And there's amazing community members like Kent C. Dodd, who's super influential in the MCP space. I can't wait to see a session about actually how he uses it and has integrated things into his real life every single day developing. So it's really awesome to see that. There's tons of great resources. We added tons on here. And of course, a link to that MCP Dev Days. It's 2 days, it's 4 hours each. So like lots of good jamming on that. We hope you really come and hang out with us. There's a full MCP for Beginners course if you want to really deep dive into like everything that actually connects up to LLMs, like does deployment, does the whole thing, which is really cool. The SDK, the VS Code MCP support, model context protocol, and of course, today's tutorial, that's there. Katie, I'm going to do a rapid fire Q&A. How's that sound? Really quick.
Let's do it. Rapid fire.
Yep. Praveen, how would you connect RAG with MCP? So yeah, right now there's 2 ways of doing it. So if you wanted to, for example, call an LLM from your MCP, you could do that. You could use the AI extensions for .NET and just call into that. In fact, in the repo, the C# SDK for MCP, they have a sample of doing that. So take a look at that and you can call into models either on your machine or not. There's another MCP feature that's newer. It's called sampling. What that allows your MCP server to do is actually call back into the LLM that's calling it and go back and forth and have a conversation with it in general. So that's actually pretty cool. And that's more newer experimental. So we didn't show that here. That'd be more of a deep dive. MCP servers exposed on the internet. How do you deal with auth? You integrate auth. There's a standardization into the MCP protocol that the SDKs implement to do authentication that the clients implement. So when I actually connected to GitHub yesterday, it asked me to authenticate, went through the flow, did a thing just like that, which is great. Does it support open telemetry? You could put open telemetry in your MCP server because it's your code. It's going to run your code. How do we get these slides? I don't know. We'll put it in the repo.
Put it in the repo. Yeah.
Put a PDF in there.
We'll add a link to the Monkey MCP server stuff as well. So you can check that out.
Yep. And Chirag, it is in. Authentication is built in the box. It's in there. It's all done. It's good to go. Anything else?
Some earlier ones. Let me look real quick.
We have starred ones.
Yeah, I starred some. We might have answered a lot of them.
Oh, okay. Let's just go through these. What if the host is running as a web app? So that's where the ASP.NET NuGet is, and that enables you to use server-side events or streamable HTTP to deploy that MCP server to connect to, just like GitHub. Differences between server-side events, HTTP streamable, and standard IO. So how things first started was just standard IO, and then server-side events were added on basically at the same time. That was the standard protocol. And then streamable HTTP was added on basically to enable different scenarios out there. But see the documentation to learn more. And there's samples of all those in the repo. Good question from Jose. Could you do this in Visual Studio? Exactly the same thing. In fact, Visual Studio and VS Code, the mcp.json file can live in the .vs folder, the .vs code folder. It will look at both of them. It does not matter. And the same exact things that I showed today work exactly the same 100%. We did it in VS Code because you might be developing on Linux, Mac, or Windows there. And additionally, VS Code has full support for prompts and resources, and VS is adding many of those features now. What else we got, Katie? Anything else that's good?
I think we covered a lot of these about running them locally. Yep. We're getting a couple new ones. I think a lot of these we're going to actually be covering during MCP Dev Days.
Totally. I think there'll be a semantic kernel one. Semantic kernel like enables you to expose your things to specifically MCP servers as well. So check out the documentation for being on that. I'm not a semantic kernel expert though. That's there. Yes. Good question from Larry. What if your MCP server goes down? Well, if your MCP server goes down, then it would report back based on the protocol, right? So if it's running locally and it's not running, it'll try to start it and it'll give an error message if it doesn't connect to it, basically. Yeah. Whew. We did it.
All right.
Cool.
I feel good about that.
I feel great. We did it. I mean, 15 minutes over, but good. We got some stuff there. So we'll get it done. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us, the hundreds of people and all the folks on X as well. Of course, this will be available so you can send it to all of your colleagues and friends. And of course, this tutorial to go from there and all the great things and all the awesome training as well. Yeah. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you all so much for all the awesome questions. This was a fun one. Like James said, check it out after, send it around if you want. And definitely register for MCP Dev Days on July 29th and July 30th. We'll see you there.
Cool. All right. See y'all later.
All right.
Bye-bye.